The greatness of America lies not in being more enlightened than any other nation, but rather in her ability to repair her faults. This quote from the 19th century French aristocrat Alexis de Tocqueville reflects the hopeful dream of an Americophile in 1840 calling on the country he had fallen in love with to address the gnawing flaw in its system, slavery, before it was too late. Unfortunately, that call was not heeded, and the destructive Civil War became the means by which the nation ultimately repaired itself. While de Tocqueville would undoubtedly have viewed the Civil War as a terrible and avoidable trauma, he likely would have considered it an aberration in the grander scheme. For him, the United States represented the ultimate realization of goodness in human governance and cultural advancement. De Tocqueville remains perhaps the most insightful commentator on American life since its inception. Above all, he marveled at the American dedication to equality. Remarkably, his reflections, published in a pair of volumes titled Democracy in America, continued to resonate nearly 2 centuries later, not merely for their historical insight, but for their uncanny relevance to contemporary American society and civic life. De Tocqueville dissected the American psyche with surgical precision, revealing the persistent tension between populism and elitism, prosperity and poverty, and the propensity for rugged individualism alongside communal responsibility. As he traveled across the young nation, de Tocqueville encountered a society unlike that of his native France, or indeed any other European country, defined by rigid class hierarchies. Instead, Americans were passionately committed to the idea that every person, regardless of birth or status, should have the opportunity to succeed. This commitment to equality was not without its paradoxes and imperfections. Slavery still tainted the landscape, and indigenous peoples were mistreated and displaced. But the relentless drive toward equality was unmistakable. For de Tocqueville, this was the essence of America's greatness and its unique spirit, a society striving toward a more just and equitable future, even if it stumbled and stuttered along the way. But where did this American ideal come from? De Tocqueville noted that American society's moral and ethical underpinnings were deeply rooted in religious tradition, particularly the Puritans' engagement with biblical teachings. The Puritans were the original settlers, and they laid the groundwork for the fledgling colonies, heavily influenced by the Hebrew scriptures, and seeing themselves as a new Israel tasked with building a, quote, city upon a hill, unquote. As de Tocqueville observed, religion in America must be regarded as the first of their political institutions. Indeed, many debates about justice, fairness, and equality that dominate American discourse today trace their origins back to biblical values. Recent studies have exposed the growing divide between rich and poor in modern America. A 2023 Pew Research Center study revealed that economic inequality has reached its most extreme point in half a century. Some argue for more robust government intervention to deal with the problem by taxing the wealthy, expanding social welfare, and protecting workers' rights. Others advocate for greater economic freedom, suggesting that the best way to elevate the poor is by encouraging market forces and reducing regulation. But both sides, whether they realize it or not, are wrestling with questions that were addressed by the Torah thousands of years ago. Consider the ongoing battle over the minimum wage. Advocates for raising the minimum wage insist that in a just society, no one who works full-time should live in poverty. Their opponents claim that raising the minimum wage will lead to job losses, stifle economic growth, and increase poverty. This tension is not new. It reflects an ancient debate about the balance between fairness and freedom, the rights of the individual versus the needs of the community. In Parshat Kitetse, the Torah confronts these very issues head-on, offering a blueprint for a society that balances economic opportunity with social responsibility. In Kitetse, the Torah instructs the Israelites, do not oppress a hired worker who is poor and needy, whether he is one of your brothers or a stranger in your land. This law is not merely about fair wages. It is about recognizing the inherent dignity of every person, whether an Israelite or an outsider. The worker must be treated with respect and fairness. The Torah anticipated the modern debate over wages by making it clear that economic interactions are not just transactions governed by self-interest, but rather they are moral encounters that must reflect society's values. The 19th century commentator Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch understood these laws as far more than just economic policy. He saw them as a call to build a community where everyone feels valued and respected, regardless of their economic status. The Torah is not satisfied with a society that only practices charity, said Rabbi Hirsch. It demands a society based on justice. It is not enough for those who have more to give to those who have less. Rather, society must be built on a foundation where the rights of every individual are respected and upheld. Bottom line, it's not about charity, it's about justice. The Torah does not shy away from economic realities, but always frames them within a broader ethical context. In a society governed by Torah values, every person has responsibilities. The wealthy must support the poor. Employers must treat employees fairly, and judges must apply the law without prejudice. But the Torah also insists on personal accountability. For example, the commandment to return lost property requires individuals to take active steps to ensure they honor their civic duty and strive for something more than just taking care of themselves and their families. This mirrors modern debates about personal responsibility versus societal obligations, urging a balanced approach that integrates both. Unlike modern systems that often veer between extremes, total government control or laissez-faire capitalism, the Torah offers a middle path. It recognizes the importance of private property and economic initiative, but insists on a framework that protects the vulnerable. It acknowledges human ambition while warning against exploitation. De Tocqueville might have been surprised to learn just how deeply the American ethos of equality and justice is rooted in ancient Jewish teachings. By observing America's unique commitment to these ideals, which he so admired and championed, he was indirectly paying homage to the Torah's blueprint for society. The Jewish vision of justice is not about creating a so-called utopia of absolute equality, which in practice often drags everyone down to the lowest common denominator. Instead, it seeks to build a society where each person has the opportunity to thrive, where the poor are not exploited, and where every individual, from the widow to the laborer, is treated with dignity and respect. As we approach what is turning out to be one of the most contentious elections in modern history, living up to de Tocqueville's hopeful ideal that America's greatness lies in her ability to repair her faults will require a Herculean effort. De Tocqueville was concerned that the path to repair not descend into internecine violence or the chaos of destructive struggles that tear society apart. Tragically, that is exactly what happened in the Civil War. We cannot and must not let it happen again. Instead, we need to draw on the wisdom of the Torah's teachings alongside America's foundational ideals so that we can keep the great American project on track. By embracing these principles, justice balanced with mercy, and freedom tempered with responsibility, we can work towards a society that truly embodies justice and compassion, in which America's promise of equality is not a hollow ideal, but a lived reality.